Hey everyone, welcome to Steve and Friends. You're joining with the multiple thousands of people across the globe that are watching this today because we are going to chat to one of my favourite mates and human beings, Mr. Tim Douglas himself, all the way from Melbourne in Australia. Now, Tim, you're a good mate, and just pretend it's me and you chatting in the Qantas lounge, and we're just chewing the fat. So don't worry about the millions listening in. It's just,
mate, I do miss those days.
Yes, it seemed a long and distant past memory.
Yes.
But listen, many people that listen to these interviews are from Queensland and Northern Territory, and obviously you are so well known across Sydney because that's where you're from, and in Melbourne because that's where you are. But globally, and especially here, Queensland, Northern Territory, not everybody knows you as well as I've had the chance to get to know you over recent years. So we want to put that right. So if that's all right, mate, we're going to get inside what's going on. So just for everybody's benefit, Tim is the Victoria Tasmania state leader for Hillsong Church. He's the best looking state leader in the whole of Melbourne. That's the truth. He oversees 5 locations around Victoria, 2 in Tasmania, 7 locations in all. Pre-COVID, that's kind of 6,500 people. So it's a significant work and part of our church that Tim leads. But we'll talk church later. Let's just do your timeline, mate. Where are you? So you were born at a very young age, and then now you are older and in Melbourne. So what happened in between?
Mate, it's was a wonderful start to the journey. My family, we started off in the eastern suburbs of Sydney, and was born early 80s, believe it or not. And so and then we spent a few years in Sydney, and then Dad actually got a job in Hong Kong for a couple of years. And so we spent a couple of years there living in Stanley Markets, for anyone who knows Hong Kong, and some great early memories there. Yeah. And then moved back to the Hills District in about mid-80s, 88, sorry. And found Hillsong Church. I remember my mum and dad would always tell us stories how, back then, and, Pastor Brian knows this story, that maybe the preaching wasn't where it is now, but they really just felt a sense and a call that this is where their kids were supposed to grow up. And so, I've got a couple of siblings that people might have heard of, and, I'm just praying for, one of my younger brothers that he'll really do more things in the Lord. He's struggling worship band. He's trying to get going. So just praying for him. But no, I think it's just been a good journey. And then really grew up, went to Bible college, and then, at Bridal College, because I did meet my beautiful wife, Nicola, there. Yep. And then straight after that, went to London for, just over 4 years, and was the youth pastor there. I think I did every job on staff. I was the creative pastor. I was the kids pastor. I was the events coordinator. I helped start and pioneer Paris and another campus in London. It was a big 4.5 years. And then one day, me and Nicola felt the call to come back to Australia. She has family in England, so she's from England. And then, moved back to Sydney for a few years and took on a location called Macquarie, kind of halfway between Hills and City, university kind of district. Had fun there for a few years. And then, got the call up to head to Melbourne. We actually were feeling one year that Melbourne was on our hearts. And, we didn't say anything to anyone, and then see it on Vision Sunday presentation. And the next Hillsong location is, and the world kind of spins, and out comes Melbourne. And we're like, oh no, we missed it. We should have said something to someone. And really from that minute thought, hey, let's keep our mouth shut and see what happens. And then, a few months later, actually 18 months later or so, get pulled into a room. And at that stage, Melbourne Storm were winning. And, Queenslanders, big rugby league community up there. And it was the years of the Queensland dominance where Billy Slater, Cameron Smith.
We can talk about that a lot longer later if you want.
No, it's still a deep wound in my heart. So, but, along those lines, Pastor Brian pulled me into his room. He's like, hey, so, we think about some changes. Okay, here we go. And he just asked me this first question. He says, do you like Billy Slater? And no offense to any Queenslanders, but I just absolutely said, no, I don't. I don't like him. He's caused a lot of pain and heartache in my life. Respect him, but definitely don't like him. And he said, well, hey, would you like to go to Melbourne? I'm like, yeah, no worries, let's do it. And that kind of was the start of
that can only be a Melbourne Brian approach to moving somebody across the world just like the church.
Do you like a sports star? No, I don't, but hey, let's give it a crack anyways. And so then, that was about nearly 8 years ago now, where we moved to Melbourne and knew no one. I'd only been here once before, and there's a lot more of a God story in there. Save it for episode 4 and 5 for you. But it was a great time, and really got going and moved down here with our family, not really knowing anyone, and starting with about 30 or so people in a lounge room in the city suburbs of Melbourne, and it's been an incredible journey since.
Fantastic. Man, there's so much stuff in there. I'd love to talk about all of that. Just very quickly, though. So you're in London, and from London helped plant the church in Paris. Now, that's quite a story, I guess. So just very quickly, how do you plant a church in Paris from London?
There was a team of us who started going across and running connect groups. And so Brennan White, who's the pastor there now, Monsieur Blanc, was there, and he moved across there from London. He was in London for a while. And so there was, to help the location, the church off the ground, a group of us would head over, Friday afternoon. We'd get off the Eurostar because you catch the train, and we'd go, straight to the venue. We'd unpack a truck and set up church, do a couple of services on a Friday night, then pack down. That was probably done by about 1 a.m. You'd head off and have dinner, your first meal of the day. And you'd be, about 1 a.m, 2 a.m. by the time you got your food. It was normally not that great anyways. Then you go back to the apartment and stay on the floor with someone, and get about 2.5, 3 hours sleep before you had to get back to the Eurostar to catch the train back for a few hours home to get ready for the other church we had planted on a Saturday night service in Surrey. So it was not glamorous days, but super exciting, and have got incredible memories and a full heart from all those days for sure.
That's fantastic. That's real church planting, mate. That's the real get your hands dirty church planting, willing to do anything, go the second, third, and 100th mile. So well done for doing that. That's brilliant. Listen, I want to talk to you about your family. So you've already mentioned a couple of unnamed brothers that we still haven't given recognition to. But just tell me about your wife and kids first. So Nick is an amazing human being. Everybody knows that. She's unbelievable. Describe your wife a little bit, and then your 4 kids.
Yeah, my wife is super talented, super disciplined, pretty much the Holy Spirit, and is just unbelievable. And I guess the other part of my wife is she's just so lucky. I mean, she's got me as a husband, so I'm glad she's not in the room to rebuttal anything I'm saying just then. But no, she's unbelievable. She is loves studying, and I think in a university got first-class honours from one of the best universities in Europe, studying cellular molecular biology. And look at that! That's someone telling me to keep talking about my wife. But no, she's unreal, and she studied a great deal, and then decided to, go down this road of becoming a pastor and church building and church planning with me. And before we got to Melbourne, she would admit that she was quite shy and didn't want anything to do with a platform or preaching or anything like that. I think there was one time I did get her asked her to preach, and one morning she woke up. This is before we moved to Melbourne, and she was under a panic attack. Couldn't do it. So she just handed me the notes and said, sorry, I can't do it. And I think her last feeling of preaching was that morning of failure where I had to step in and preach her notes for her. Again, did a banging job. I was just an incredible preacher that day. And then so when she moved down to Melbourne, I think she's so courageous and said, all right, I'm up for this, let's do it. And so in that has brought our 3 munchkins along the journey of ministry and church planning and just going for it and doing the best we can and making plenty of mistakes along the way, but giving them as much of our love, attention, affection, and belief as we possibly can. Yeah. And so we've got a 11-year-old, Leela, a 9-year-old who's about to be 10 very soon, Cooper, and a 6-year-old, the cheekiest of cheekiness for our 6-year-old little daughter. And so we've got 3 of them. Wonderful. We are done. No more children for us.
Definitely 4, mate. Definitely 4.
Hey, listen, what's funny is we did think about it the other night, like lockdown. I mean, we would have been locked down for 6 months. We could have been 2/3 of the way there, but no, alas, there has been medical procedures that have ensuring that doesn't happen again.
In Queensland, they call them the bricks.
Yeah.
Moving on. It's amazing that Nick was so reticent to be a preacher when everybody that hears her and knows her now takes her as being one of the very best preachers. that we've got globally. She's unbelievable.
Well, she's got some pedigree. Her parents and grandparents, her actually grandfather was the guy who used to take Robert Ferguson on his first ministry trips, and her parents were the crusade directors for Reinhard Bonnke. So, you know, like she's got some background there.
Well, there you go. Let's talk about the rest of your family now. The Douglas clan,
Yes.
Almost like a dynasty within. In my notes here it says dysentery. I reckon that's probably so. But a dynasty within within Hillsong Church. Your parents are absolutely awesome. Maybe tell everybody a little bit, like describe your mum and dad, Paul and Robin, because they're sensational people.
Yeah, for sure. They are unbelievable people, and to know them is to love them. My dad, me and my brothers look forward to hanging out with my dad as a mate every chance we get, and we're all together. His nickname is P. Dougie, and if a typical family dinner will have us at some point, all of us turn on my father and just rip him to shreds with love and affection, and end in all of us crying with tears and great stories of the past. Mum has been an incredible backbone of our family, you know, working multiple jobs, would, you know, drop us off early in school and come and get us and drag us along to youth and to football training. And, you know, I've always got clear memories of Mum praying in tongues all the time throughout our car rides, because she was just that person, always putting on worship music, inspiring us with the things of God and praying over us as young kids. And I think a lot of what we're doing and where we are now has got a lot to do with her, for sure. And so just incredible people who I love and admire big time.
That's awesome. And again, the three siblings, still haven't named them yet, but one, you have a sister, which not everybody knows, but she's in Queensland. So
she is.
Tell us about Renee.
Renee is an incredible human being, one of the most family-oriented people, and just wants to keep everyone making sure they're together and communicating. She sent our family a wonderful, huge care package of puzzles and goodies and sugar, which will keep the ISO bod on full flight just a few days ago. And so, yeah, she goes to our Coomera campus up there, and recently been married and has a beautiful little daughter, and is kind of everyone in the family is most jealous of Renee, because she does live on the Gold Coast with a pool in the backyard, and we all get sent photos that, I don't admire that at all. Well, that's very cool. Now,
we've got to mention them at some stage.
Yeah, we do.
So tell us the names of your younger brothers and what they get up to.
Yeah. So Tyler Douglas is my youngest brother, and he is 14 years younger than me. And our, you know, beautifully hearted, caring family joke is that we always tell him he was a surprise, or, you know, he's been adopted. And so he always just goes down that road.
Sort of way.
Yeah, endearing, always. And no, he's a legend, and he works for our youth department in our Hills campus and has been a part of Young and Free and that. And then there's JD Jonathan Douglas, who is my other younger brother by a couple of years. And he is, you know, again, I'm praying for him, just believing that God will one day use him and in some shape or form.
So they both end up with these incredible roles as worship leaders, musicians, vocalists, singers, known across the globe. So what went wrong with your music career then?
Listen, I'm still believing, still fasting and praying that, you know, one of my 700 albums that I've put together will just really get picked up at some point.
One big hit and you'll be out there. All right, let's go on to Brian and Bobby, because in one sense you're almost part of their family as well. I mean, you've known them for a long time. Tell us a little bit about your relationship with Pastor Brian and Bobby.
Yeah. Love and respect them hugely. I think, like many do. I guess the privilege I got growing up, and still to this day, is got really close with them as a family as well. Ben Houston, their middle child, their middle son, and me grew up as best mates and best men at each other's weddings and so on. And, you know, there was many days and many times that I was sleepovers and hangouts and spend multiple times at each other's house. You know, we did Christmas night at the river at their place, and had a wonderful time hanging out growing up. And so many memories of good, hilarious, and, you know, bustings as well by Pastor Brian. You're kind of in those moments where you're a teenager going, is this my mate's dad? Or is this my boss? Or is this my pastor? Which way is this going? And so that was always fun navigating. But to watch them on the platform and who they are leading our church, and then have had the privilege of seeing them be exactly who they are in private, just as big as hearted, just as generous. Bobby is Mrs. Hospitality to a T, like just literally wants to take care of you all the time. And Pastor Brian is generous, absolutely as generous as you can get. And so I think some of the attributes you see about our church and our part of our house is because it first started with their house. And it's pretty cool to have learned and watched that firsthand.
That's great. So now, I mean, that's really interesting that you say all of that, because not everybody gets access, if you like, to like just hanging out and talking. But you had that over many years and now work for Brian. So how does it work for you when he's your boss today, but he's also the guy that's been best mates with his son and so on? So how do you get that right?
Yeah, I think I think it was Gary Clark a long time ago. And he was speaking about his relationship with Brian and how that worked. And he said, well, if I always treat him like a boss, then he can treat me like a mate. But if I always treat him like a mate, then he'll always have to act like a boss. And I just kind of listened to that. And so now, again, Pastor Brian, and, as you know, you work closely now as well, and especially when the plane and airports were open, there'd be many times where he's so relational, and it's almost like you just keep hanging out and chatting, but it's always remembering, hey, anytime he wants to click into boss mode, that's what we treat him and give him space to do. I think, and that's how the relationship works for me, I guess, and just giving him space to always be my boss. But hey, if we get to hang out and laugh and talk about footy and how incredible New South Wales Origin team's been going in recent times, I mean, that's a great conversation to have.
Sorry, there's a lot of wind in here. I couldn't quite hear that one. Let's move on. Let's talk about the pandemic. Let's change subjects radically, because people would love to hear from you, because being right now in Melbourne, you're in the centre of the toughest season and the toughest place to be experiencing the season. So to start out, I'm sorry about that, mate. We're kind of hurting.
Yeah, thanks,
you and for everybody there. Just to let everybody know, this is while we're at the point that we're recording this, there's over 19,000 cases taking place, of which 2,500 over are actually active today, 570 deaths, 420 in hospital today, stage 4 lockdown. I mean, that's pretty tough going. That's hard to take. What does stage 4 lockdown mean to you as a family?
Yeah, I think while there's definitely been some benefits, and I think I've talked about that publicly before, but last year and the last 7 years, church planning has been huge, and with that has come massive demands on my time. And same with Nicola; she's the city campus pastor, our biggest campus here, and does an incredible job. But as a family, that's meant we've been constantly running at 1,000,000 miles an hour. And so on the plus side, it's meant family dinners every night. It's meant, cuddle up on the movie, in front of the movie, in front of the TV with the kids on, a few nights a week. It's meant, I'm surprised they haven't busted through this door in the office just because they want to come and tell me they achieved something in their schoolwork. So there's been definitely some blessings to it. And I think you've got to hold on to them in this period because it's been really tough. Constant feedback and maybe the conversations I'm having with people is it's just draining. It's just super exhausting when, pretty much since March, we began this lockdown. In most other states, I think the schools have been going pretty much that whole time. Well, our kids have been at home, homeschooled for most of that time. I think it was a few weeks that they went back to school and then everything changed again. And so the demands that puts on a family unit and trying to work and trying to be productive, and then even just little things like, well, you can't go out. You can't go out, past 8 o'clock at night. You can only go out to exercise. And if I'm going to go to the shops to get milk, which I can, if I just need to get milk, somehow I just find the way. We might have 700 litres in the fridge, but I just need to go get one more litre sometimes just to get out of the house. But it kind of gets like that. And hearing my son last week, I'm like, hey, mate, what do you want to do today? He goes, Dad, I just want to go to Woolies. I'm like, what do you mean? And it dawned on me that our kids haven't been out of the house other than just to go for a walk around the block or so, because they're not even allowed to go to the shops. And so it's been, quite a long period. And so with that comes just this relentless, exhausting, trying to get yourself back up again, trying to go, no, it is going to be okay. We are going to get through this. Yeah. And I'm feeling that's the tension in Melbourne right now in most households.
You have
where
people
it
in
is
the
just difficult.
church that have been tested positive for COVID-19?
Yeah, only a handful, which is, that's great on one side. And then again, it also brings up the frustration of, why are we, under so much lock and key when there's only a handful that we even know ourselves. But for everyone who's been affected by it, it's such a tragedy, and it's always got to be kept that in perspective for sure. But, I think the reality is maybe not affected by the sickness themselves, but we're losing businesses every week from people in church. There's always constant reports of people struggling with substance abuse. There's domestic violence reports. There's a whole bunch of serious knock-on effects, maybe not because of the virus itself, but the impacts it's having on families' lives and livelihoods is huge. And so all your prayers are coveted right now. And we're doing it tough and doing our best. And even in the midst of that, like I said, there is some still positives that people are looking to and holding on to in this season.
Yeah, well said, mate. Well, stay strong and stay safe on that. Listen, maybe a little bit of Tim Douglas wisdom then, out of everything that you've been going through. For the people listening to this, that obviously we're all in this pandemic season, just in different geographical locations facing it. One tip from Tim on handling this season.
Yeah, great question. I think the one thing that's helped us as a family, our staff and team, I met with all our parents that are on our staff, and I just encourage everyone to be kind to yourself. Just give yourself some grace. It's an unprecedented time. Yeah. Pressures come and go and can come in fast, and all the rest of that, and the proximity that we have on top of each other, things can get pretty heated pretty quickly. And so I just said, you'd rather come out of the other side of this season more in love, not having to repair damage, and not looking back with regret. And so I just said, hey, take the pressure off yourself. I'm trying to take the pressure off as a leader, as a boss, as a dad, as a husband, and go, hey, let's just make sure we look back on this season with fond memories of spontaneity, of laughter, of giggles, of, just whatever we can do to have got great memories of this season, not one of tension, disruption, regret. So I think
maybe one leadership lesson.
Yeah. Okay. Realizing that it's not, there's something about how maybe it's just the control freak in me that always wants to have it how we want. And I think when things aren't going your way, you got two options. You can try and keep forcing it to do what you want, or, the old saying, you make, lemonade out of lemons. And I think that's my approach. We're going to make lemonade. Oh, sorry, mate. The video stopped. One leadership lesson from us is to, from me, would be to make sure equipment doesn't die in the middle of interviews and go from great cameras to backup cameras. But along those lines, I think a lot of us love to be in control of everything all the time. And if this season's taught us anything, that you can't be in control all the time, if at all at the moment. And the economy is doing one thing, the numbers and the infection rates are doing this thing, governments are doing another. And I think as a leader, instead of trying to hold and manipulate and control, I think you just got to make the best out of every scenario and go, how do I make this a win? How do I make today a win? How do I, didn't see this coming, but how do we make sure we come out of it stronger, better, more in love with Jesus, more in love with each other as a team, as a family? And, that whole saying of making lemonade when you get given lemons. And I guess there's a whole bunch of lemons in this season, but not choosing to get bitter by it or, frustrated. We go, okay, how am I going to make this awesome? How do we make the best out of this? And whether that's for my kids, whether that's for, Nicola, and doing different date nights in a different kind of creative way, or for our team and for our staff, I've just chosen to go, whatever the circumstance is, we will make this a win and we will turn this into a win. And as a leader, that's my job. That's no one else's job. That's my job to lead that way. And I think if I look at everything as obstacles and opposition and defeat, then that's how everyone sees it. But if I can continue as my ways to lead in myself, looking as whatever it is, hey, let's turn this into a win, it's amazing how everyone else can see it as well.
Fantastic. Tim, thank you so much for sharing a bit of time with us. I know everybody will appreciate getting to know you a little bit better, some of the stories and catch your heart. I would say to you, mate, I'm decades older than you are, and yet you've always treated me as a mate, and for that I'll always be grateful. The church is in a good place. with guys like yourself among our key leaders. So we love you. We love you for that as well. But I love you for the love that you have for Nick and the kids, the love that you have for the church, our church, the love that you have for Pastor Brian and Bobby. It comes out of you and it comes through you, and for that, I'm very grateful for that too. And probably also for the sense of fun. We always have a smile on our face when we're working or not working. So that's a great thing.
Yes,
I appreciate you, mate. Love you, not just your leadership, but who you are. So God bless you for chatting with us today. And everybody else, people, hope you enjoyed getting to know Tim just a little bit more. Please stay safe, and we'll talk again next time.